And first of all, I just want to thank everyone for coming and attending this webinar. We'll be doing a series of webinars this summer and fall in the area of tourism marketing. So I'm going to go ahead and get started so we can get through all this content. I've produced a fairly robust presentation here, and to kick off this year's tourism marketing webinar series. So I'm Justin Belleme. I'm the founder and director of strategy of the JB Media Group and the co-founder of the JB Media Institute, which is an online training program. We're located in Asheville, North Carolina, and I've been in this area my entire life and have been working in various elements of tourism and festival and conference marketing for over 15 years. So I'm really excited to share what I think are some of the most important questions that every marketing team should be able to answer. That's regardless of whether or not you're talking about yourself as a marketing director, your internal staff, if you're supervising marketing people in your organization, or if you have one or more outside vendors that you're working with. In any case, this should apply to all those different scenarios, and that's the purpose of the webinar today. So I'm going to go ahead and get started to make sure we have time to cover all the content that I've put together. So I've organized the questions into the following sections. We have a section for SEO, social media, Google Ads, PR and email marketing. So we have between 2 and 4 questions for each of these sections. And we'll also be sharing with everyone afterwards the ebook version of this, which actually has a few questions that I'm not going to have time to cover today, and more thorough written answers to back up what's on the slides. Obviously, the slide presentation is actually one of the more text-heavy slide presentations I've ever done, just to make sure I got everything communicated, but the ebook version is even longer and has more information. That's all going to be delivered free of charge, and this is part of our efforts this year to provide more valuable training opportunities for the tourism industry. So getting started, SEO questions. I'm going to cover what is the question, what is the overall strategy, what is the plan for new content, how are we building links, and whether or not site speed, time on site, and click-through rate are being considered as SEO factors. So first question. What is the overall strategy? So if you are working with an SEO vendor, you should be able to ask them this question. They should be able to give you an answer quickly. I'm going to talk about what answers I would expect to hear from someone who knows what they're doing. If you are doing SEO, you should be able to answer this question if it's asked of you. And if you are, supervising someone internally and they're responsible for SEO, you should be able to ask them this. And if you're that person doing it internally, you should be able to answer these questions. So, in my opinion, a good thorough SEO plan or strategy should include the following elements. It should include a strategy to address the HTML formatting of the website, the metadata and structured data of the actual pages of the site, a plan and strategy for optimizing existing website content, a plan for developing new content, or at least an approach to optimizing new content, and some measures to improve the overall website's authority, authority is a word that describes how strong a website is compared to other websites. And that's mostly a factor of how many links it has and how old those links are. It also has to do with the number of pages and how consistent the theme of those pages is in terms of topic content on the site. Oops, I'm heading ahead of myself here, jumped ahead there. So in my opinion, your SEO team should be able to respond within, I'd say 24, no more than 48 hours, with at least a high-level overview of the strategy. And you shouldn't ask them these specific bullets. You should hope that they would respond with something that includes at least most of these. Now, in my experience, SEO professionals usually are stronger in one area than another, and they may weight that area more heavily. So they might be very technical and focus on the first 2 bullets. They might be very much a content-focused approach, or maybe a writing background. They might focus more on the third and fourth bullet, the optimization of new and existing content, or they might be more of a link building expert and really focus on those link building tactics or the directory submissions or things of that nature. So that is, this it's a strategy that I think is comprehensive, should at least have an answer for all 5 bullets. They may not be able to give you exactly what they're doing, and they may say that we don't have to worry about that right now, we've decided that's not a priority, but they should at least have considered each one and have thoroughly thought through whether or not how that's important for the SEO. If they're not, then if these things aren't all covered, that means that your SEO team or vendor or resource might not have a full picture of what's necessary for SEO. So moving on a little bit from this, so I have people joining the call, it's great. The next question is, what's the plan for new content? So websites are not going to improve the number of topics and keywords they rank for unless there's a plan to consistently build new content. So your SEO team should be able to provide a plan for creating new content, or an explanation of how they're interfacing with the content development team or your content writer, whoever you have doing the content, maybe that's yourself. There should be a plan for how that content, the topics are being chosen from an SEO perspective, and whether and how it's going to be optimized, and to make sure it's aligning with your SEO strategy. So that's to make sure that your strategy with your content on your website is set up in such a way that you're going to be building new organic search engine positions in Google and other search engines to make your site get more traffic organically. There should also be a plan to improve upon existing content, and either expand it or write sub-pages, or you just do the editing and optimization of the pages themselves, because there's almost always ways to improve old content unless it's been edited recently. And there should be a plan. This is both an SEO and just general best practice. There should be a plan to update old pages and keep them up to date with the most current information, as well as the most current SEO best practices. So if creating or adding new content is not part of an SEO strategy, I consider that a red flag. And part of the goal of this presentation is to give you some red flags to look out for in your own strategy, or in the strategy that you're managing from outside people, so that you know where your gaps might be and what you might need to focus on going forward. So I want to show an example real quickly. This is from a client of ours that we worked with for several years. This is from the Blue Ridge National Heritage Area, and we did their SEO project in 2011, 2012, and now actually they're going through a complete website redesign, which is launching in a few weeks, and I'm actually involved in that as well from an SEO perspective. But this is an example of a section of their website that we significantly expanded in 2011. They had a very basic Cherokee history page, and we had identified that as a major keyword for their website, and we helped them develop this main page and then these 5 separate sub-pages to help them have more authority on the subject of Cherokee history. And now this web page is ranked in the top 5 for Cherokee history, whereas before I think they were on page 4 or 5, around number 35 or 40 in the search results. So this is an example of focusing a strategy on keywords, developing new content, expanding an existing section, and having a major impact on their ranking. It went from a page that got almost no traffic to one of their top 10 entry points to their website after this expansion. Next question is about link building. So any reputable SEO team should know the importance of links and be able to suggest new ways to earn them. Now, one thing that's important to note is that it can be very expensive to pay a professional SEO person to build the links for you. It might be something you have to do internally. It might be something you have to do, have an intern even do potentially if you have a hard time finding the time and resources to do it with your staff. But your SEO team needs to be able to come up with a plan and help you kind of have a prioritization of that plan and some best practices on how to execute it. So for tourism organizations, one thing that's really important is public relations. You should have a public relations plan that is building online articles with links back. You should also have a partnership strategy in place, and a lot of times that can be your own members. So if you are a destination marketing organization, technically you can require your members to link to your website in exchange for you listing them or giving them maybe an enhanced listing if they link back. I know that the Asheville Convention and Visitors Bureau requires that their members link to them if they want to be listed on the website. And that is a strong motivation for them, so they all link back, and that builds their authority and helps them rank much better for Asheville related keywords. So partnerships, that's a type of partnership, partnering with your own members, but you can also partner with other non-competitive organizations to trade links or build linked content. And then as necessary, you can do direct outreach, and that's what's the most time consuming and sometimes hardest to schedule, but it's also really important. So I think that all these approaches should be discussed and prioritized and considered, and if they're not, then that means your SEO strategy isn't complete. So the biggest red flag within link building is any strategy that suggests buying or automating link building. These kind of strategies violate Google's webmaster terms, and if your SEO team says we should use a site like backlinks.com or one of the other services that's similar to that, that's a huge problem. Never do that. It can put you in a blacklist for months or even years, and you might never recover from something like that. So please do not buy links. Please do not hire automated link building services, and be cautious about any sort of service where you're paying for links, unless you're paying for someone to do the labor of doing outreach for you. So next question in SEO, whether or not your website speed, your time on site, your click-through rate, these are all considered parts of technical SEO or usability or user experience-based SEO. This is a newer consideration in SEO over the last 4 or 5 years. So, technical SEO, sometimes it's like the thing that people know the best. And other SEO people who are more content focused know little about this area. So it's really important to kind of find the strengths and weaknesses with your SEO strategy. So if you had an SEO audit done, it should address your website speed, the usability, which is typically time on site, bounce rate, and other things like that, number of pages per session. And it should also address existing content metadata optimization and internal linking. So whereas building links for other websites is really time consuming, strengthening your internal link profile and making sure your content links together in an optimized way is actually one of the easiest things to do from an SEO perspective, and often can have a pretty nice result. So all these things should be in your strategy, and some of these things, like the design and the internal linking, is more about the design of the site. Site speed is more about how the code is formatted, which platform you're using from between WordPress and other options, and how much server space, how much RAM you have on your server can affect site speed, how many extraneous tools your site's using for user tracking and other things that can add to your site load time. So you should be lean and clean with only using things you're actually utilizing, and there's other things you can do technically to speed up the site. And the faster the site is, the better chance it has of ranking highly. So in some cases, these are expensive and it may even require a complete website redesign. And there are certain situations I've seen where doing a complete redesign is pretty much necessary to see SEO improvements. In other cases, it's not as important. So you might have to hire someone who has a real specific specialty in this to understand what you need to do for your website. But hopefully your SEO team has enough working knowledge of this to be able to fine-tune your technical SEO to make sure it's not holding you back. So one element of that is checking your site speed, and you can use the free Google Site Speed Insights. If you just search for Google Page Speed Insights, you can put your URL in and it'll give you a score. If you're in the 70s or 80s, then you are going to be just fine. But if you're in the 50s or 60s, you probably need a little bit of work, and if you're below 50, you should definitely address your site speed. And you can get a separate speed for desktop as well as mobile. So moving on, got a little ahead of myself there. Moving on, we're going to talk about 3 questions with social media. One of them is, what is the content strategy? Which platforms are the priority? And what is the paid strategy? So the first 2 sections, the SEO section and the social media section, are the largest sections of the presentation. I'm spending a little more time on each slide to make sure I go deep, because these are some of the most important elements of a tourism marketing online strategy. So that's a explanation of kind of the pacing a little bit, but I'm going to move on to go over this first question. What is the content strategy for social media? So in my opinion, professional social media managers will always build a content strategy before taking over and start posting on your social accounts. And in my opinion also, achieving your goals which often include increasing your website traffic from social media, can be difficult without a written strategy, because when you just start posting, oftentimes you don't have a good plan for what content to highlight and how often to talk about certain things that are on the website, or whether or not your website content strategy is strong enough to support your social media strategy. Also, having a strategy will help you come up with unique themes that'll set your social media accounts apart from your competitors. Understanding what the formats are, how much graphic design support you might need, other things of that nature to make it really a strong strategy versus just an ad hoc or kind of fly by the seat of your pants approach, which a lot of small organizations or less sophisticated organizations will take, which usually leads to a strategy that's hard to evaluate and can be difficult to quantify as far as its impact. So in my opinion, many inexperienced social media managers will just start posting on the pages and might create a little bit of content into like a content calendar or content bank, but often don't go as far as building out a real robust plan and prioritization and working with the other team members who are doing website content and graphic design to make sure it's all integrated and coordinated around goals and measurable results that can be tracked over time with KPIs or key performance indicators or goals for each different area of the social media strategy. So I think that hopefully you are working with someone who thinks that way and has a strategic approach, and that you'll have a much better result if you do. So at JV Media, we do our own social media. We have content calendars like this one. This is just a snapshot of one of our content calendars from a couple months ago. Talks about some of the things going on in our company, including my wedding. That was the Sunday, April 29th. And then it also talks about some other small business things going on and events that we're doing, which just sort of is our kind of approach. And we do this kind of content calendaring for every single client that we're doing social media for, giving them a chance to review the content 2 to 4 weeks ahead of time so that we make sure everything's in alignment and we have, lined up with the goals. So next question, what platforms are priority? This is really important for every social media account, is to have understanding of the priorities. So in my opinion, you shouldn't be prioritizing the newest and trendiest social platforms. You should be sticking to what really works and what works for your target audience. So within tourism, it's my strong opinion that there's really 4 social platforms, including YouTube, which is kind of more than a social platform, but there's 4 that are worth exploring and really worth considering. Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Pinterest. Now, there are other very niche platforms like TripAdvisor and others like that, Yelp in some cases, that should be considered, that aren't always even on the table for other businesses. But for tourism, we're seeing Facebook has been the strong leader for a long time. Instagram is actually catching up and in some places maybe taking the priority, but both of those are important. YouTube's really critical. Having video content is really important for tourism marketing if you can afford it. So that should be in the mix. And then Pinterest is great. People use it for planning travel. And so you should have at least this presence there. And it's not as active of a social network, doesn't take as much active management to do well. But Facebook and Instagram are going to be where your time is spent, where your graphic design resources are spent, and probably where your paid advertising is spent as well, which is the next question we have. So whenever I talk about social media, I like to throw up little graphics like this. This is the top 15 or 16 social networks according to whoever created this graphic. I didn't create it myself. I always think it's interesting to see how this changes over time. Some of these graphics that are on this slide, like WhatsApp and Tumblr, weren't on here a couple years ago, and there's some that have disappeared from this list that may have been a priority a few years ago. Obviously, Facebook and Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube are the first 4. And those are, still important. We are not using Twitter as often for tourism. It's better for customer service and answering people's questions than it is for actually driving traffic. And so if website traffic is your primary goal or maximum reach, then I would say that Facebook and Instagram remain the most important by far. So next is paid strategy. And this is really, really important for tourism in my opinion. Most tourism organizations have at least some money set aside for advertising. And I think that a good percentage of that should be really in the mix for social media. So particularly Facebook should be part of nearly all tourism-based businesses' marketing budget. And not only just doing the organic, but having a paid strategy. Pinterest and Instagram are increasingly valuable, especially Instagram, which can be managed from inside of the Facebook ad manager. So in my opinion, this is, may seem like a lot for some. In some cases, it might seem like a low number, but I would say 15 to 30% of your paid advertising budget should be planned to spend on social media. It's simply the least expensive way to reach people and target them based on where they live and what they're interested in, which are two of the best ways to indicate interest in potentially visiting or traveling to a destination. So it's also great for reaching people who visited your site before using remarketing and other types of advertising that are possible through Facebook. So it's really important that it's part of your strategy. I think that we're ignoring Facebook ads and relying on native or organic content will really limit your ability to reach a lot of people and have a measurable increase in exposure from social media. So if that's your approach, I would strongly recommend trying to lobby for at least a couple $100s a month. I've seen situations where even $200 a month can go a really long way. If you're going to put the time and energy into producing the content, you might as well spend some money to make sure it's seen by the people who you want it to be seen by. And increasingly, that requires a little bit of an ad budget. So on the side of Facebook advertising, a lot of the lowest common denominator strategy is just to do organic posts and boost them. That is okay, especially when you're just getting started, but I want the listeners to understand that a robust social strategy requires using different types of advertising than just boosted posts and learning to navigate the Facebook Ads Manager to run more sophisticated and complex ad campaigns on Facebook and on Instagram. So, we have other training. We'll be doing additional training this year on those platforms. And we also have more robust courses that go in deeper detail if those are things you want to learn about. But that's just something I think is really important to just go beyond what I consider the base strategy of just boosting a few posts a month. So this is just an interlude here, but this is an ad example from one of our clients. We work with a small historic inn here in Western North Carolina called the Fremont Inn, and it's I think over 100 years old now. And they have we've done a variety of ads for them, including this is an example of a sponsored ad for just kind of a generic traffic driver, and you see there's some social interaction happening on the ad itself, which makes it more viable. There's actually 28 comments on the ad, 11 shares, 142 likes. There's a lot of engagement, and that is coming from the fact that we paid to boost this post. All right, so moving on, we are approaching the halfway point of the presentation and moving on to the third of the 5 subjects. So the next subject is Google Ads. Some of you may be asking, why is it Google Ads and not Google AdWords? Google recently rebranded their Google AdWords platform to be called Google Ads. In effect, they're trying to show that they're a lot more than just text ads now. They're increasingly seeing more advertising happening in YouTube, which they own. And just some resurgent strategies within display advertising, which I'll talk about later. But just to reframe the conversation, Google Ads is now the name of what used to be called Google AdWords. And the 5 questions I'm going to cover are: what are the main campaigns and ad groups? What are the top keywords receiving clicks? What is your average cost per click? What are your calls to action? And how are you approaching video and display? So, first question. What are your campaigns and ad groups? So whoever's managing your Google Ads should be able to quickly deliver a list of your ad groups and campaigns, and they should line up logically with the overall marketing strategy as well as the organization of your website. If you're not seeing that logical alignment, then you have a big problem. So look out for campaigns that only have one campaign, not in only one ad group, or with only one ad group in each campaign. This is a not well-organized approach. I like to see 2 to 3 campaigns or more, and each campaign having 2 to 3 ad groups. It creates this logical hierarchy where you can really control where the money is going. If you're finding one area doing really well, or you want to really fine-tune what percentage of your budget are going into different initiatives, this is the only way to make that possible. Obviously, more complicated accounts can have more campaigns and more ad groups. But a good number is, 3 to 5 campaigns and 2 to 3 ad groups. That's, create a total of about 15 ad groups in that scenario, up to about 15, which is a good number to manage. More than that, it gets a little bit cumbersome. And less than that, you're probably, not having the level of control that you might want. Another thing to look out for is structures that just don't make sense logically. So ad groups that don't line up with topics that are lining up with your website, or just unusual, illogical organization. That's something to look out for when you see that what your AdWords team is, your ads team is delivering to you. So we have a client that I mentioned earlier. Actually, I showed a screenshot of their website earlier in the presentation, but it's the Blue Ridge National Heritage Area, and we've been managing their Google AdWords account for many years. And this slide shows the organization of their AdWords campaign. These are the campaigns. It might seem a little bit redundant in some areas, but they actually have 3 different websites. So they have Music Trails website, a main website, and a Heritage Trail website. So there's some redundancy in events and other areas because they have a different campaign for each website. Otherwise, it's pretty well organized. And inside of, for example, the Blue Ridge Parkway campaign, they have different ad groups that have different keywords in them. This is a nice organization for them, and it works really well. We actually met with them yesterday to go over some strategy for the next year. So the next question is, what keywords are receiving the most clicks? This is something that's really easy to export, and you should be able to get this list from your team or your vendors really fast, and it should make sense. You should see keywords that are getting clicks that are things you want to show up for, things that you're willing to pay money for clicks on. And so that if you're not seeing that, you have a problem. So this should be a list of keywords that make sense for intent to visit or intent to learn more about it, your region, your attraction, whatever you're trying to market. And then the next question is, what is your average cost per click? So average cost per click is very dependent on your industry. In tourism, I usually see between 50 cents and $3, but a lot of times, hopefully you're on the lower end of that. So between 50 cents and $1.50. Sometimes you might be seeing some clicks below 50 cents, which is great. I like to aim for an average of about $1 per click. This was my goal for many years, and it's becoming increasingly difficult to actually hit that. But I still like to set that as a goal. That means if you're spending $1,000, you're going to get 1,000 visitors. That might still feel like a lot of money, and it is in a lot of senses. $1 per visitor is you have to get a visit every couple hundred, actual customer or someone to visit your area every couple hundred clicks to make that worthwhile, which means you have to be really targeted what you're marketing, what keywords you're doing. So just having a cost per click that's twice the average means you're going to get half as many clicks for the budget, and that will make it really hard to have a positive return on your investment. So if you want to learn more about that, search this keyword, WordStream CPC benchmarks, and you'll get this link to this article. You can click right on this when you get the final presentation from Jenna. But I'm also going to show what it looks like. So this is one of the images in that article that I just referenced, and it shows your average cost per click for different industries. And you'll see that travel and hospitality is the purple one on the right, and it's actually one of the lower ones as far as the cost per click at $1.53, and for search on the top, and on the bottom of the graph is for display ads, which is 44 cents. So for banner ads, 44 cents per click. For search ads, $1.50, which is right in the middle of the range that I said, and it's at the high end of what I think is reasonable for your search ads. So you should be hopefully underneath that. If you're doing well, if you're at $1 or even less, you're doing great. So that's just a reference point to look at. So next question is, what are the CTAs and what are the conversions? And what a CTA stands for, what are the calls to action? What are you asking people to do, and how are you tracking whether or not they're doing it? And if you're not doing these things, then you're going to have a problem. So there's a little bit of a formatting issue here on my presentation, but if you can't read it, it says it's a red flag if you're not having any conversions tracked. Your CTAs and trackable conversions, they can be challenging for tourism, because a lot of regional tourism websites, they don't necessarily sell anything. They're often promoting various attractions that have ticketed sales, or obviously various accommodations. If you are an individual attraction or accommodation, this is even more important because you should be tracking actual sales, actual inquiries, actual registrations. But if you're a regional destination marketing organization, you're probably not allowed or have a limited ability to promote specific organizations, and also tracking through to whether or not someone completes the actual registration process to buy a ticket or to get a room night or whatever you're trying to promote. So that makes it harder, but not impossible. You can do things like you can we can go over the reasoning first, which I've sort of already covered, but having conversion tracking in place is important because it allows you to see which campaigns are doing better, which keywords are doing better, and you can spend more money and time on those efforts rather than just guessing or going blind with it. It also allows you to learn more about your potential visitors based on which searches generate the kind of interactions you want. So for tourism sites, without what I consider a transactional conversion, you can use engagement or site usage conversions, such as setting a goal for time on site. Like visitors who spend at least 3 minutes, consider that a conversion. That means that they're interested in your website. Or if you look at least 3 pages, it means they're engaged, and you can then run more money towards the keywords that generate those longer stays or those more engaged visits. You can also set goals for specific pages of your website that you feel indicate a strong interest in visiting, like we're exploring your events calendar, or if you have an itinerary builder or a sample itinerary page. Those pages might be good indications that someone is really interested in visiting. So if you set a conversion when someone gets to that page, then you can run more money to campaigns that drive there. The only challenge of that is if your campaigns drive people directly to those pages, they're going to have a 100% conversion rate on those visitors, and it might make certain campaigns look better than they actually are. If those people are bouncing immediately or not spending much time, then you're going to get a false positive from that type of strategy, which we've seen in some cases on some of our clients. But we just have to take that into consideration as we're making budgetary decisions or prioritization decisions. So this is really important. This is probably one of the more important slides from Google AdWords perspective, and generally from tracking your efforts, because if you can set these conversions that are logical for your website, you can actually track these across everything you do, from social media campaigns to email marketing to advertising, even PR, and to see which efforts are driving people to do the actions on your site that indicate an interest in actually visiting, actually attending things, actually showing up and converting into what you want, which is obviously either a customer or a visitor to stay multiple days in your destination. And that's what drives your revenue, what drives your tax revenue, other things that you're probably tracking really closely. So you want to have that captured inside your website and how you're tracking your campaigns. And Google AdWords is one place where it's most important because you're probably spending the most money on the actual traffic in this area. So last part of this section is video and display. For the last few years, I've not been super keen on video and display ads, but over the last couple months, I've warmed up to these because of some new technologies. So it's really important. This is an example of somewhere where I have changed my answer to this question that someone asked me. And my new answer is, we're going to try YouTube ads. We're going to try these new display campaign strategies that are coming online. Whereas a year ago, it might have been like, we think you should spend all your money on social media instead. So that's an area where I'm shifting my answer. I want to make sure our customers and our students understand that shift. So I believe that now you should really strongly be considering both display ads and video ads. For some of you, this might be an obvious thing. You might already be doing it. For others, it might be a big shift in your strategy. So if these are not part of your plan, you should be making sure they're in the mix and can be considered for your next budget cycle. And recent changes are what's driving this, in my opinion. So YouTube can increasingly taking a strong hold on where people spend their time, especially younger audiences. So you need to have an ad campaign running there. And how you can target people there is increasingly getting easier and better. And then there's now display campaigns you can run on people who recently searched for keywords in Google. So if someone's looking for, a keyword that's related to your destination or from your Google AdWords search campaign, you can now run display ads or banner ads to people who recently searched for those things, which helps build that brand awareness and repeat impressions across multiple channels, which is, as we all know, is in marketing is really important to build up that repeated visibility for your brand and your content, so that they, you can hopefully convert these people who are being distracted by so many different advertising campaigns and so many different things online. So I think that's the end of the Google AdWords piece. I didn't add a slide here. I want to just throw one thing out there for tourism. For Google AdWords offers free advertising for nonprofits, and we actually have a lot of experience working with museums and cultural attractions that are 501c3 nonprofits that have that tax-free designation to drive a ton of traffic for free. So Google offers $300 per month in free advertising for nonprofits. We currently work with several nonprofits in Cherokee, North Carolina, and also the Blue Ridge Heritage Area, which is their own designated 501c3. And those are some of the Google grants we work. We also are looking to work with a new organization, a new client, which is a research center, and they offer summer camps and educational programming called PERI, which is an astrological research institute here in near Brevard, North Carolina. So those all are learning the Google grant, and that's the Free Google for Nonprofits program. So if you're interested in that, find my email at the end of the presentation or follow up when Jenna reaches out with the slides, and I'm happy to talk to you, set up a free consult on how that might work for your local nonprofits. So this is an example of just some display advertising that I found online for Asheville. Obviously you can see here that the consistency here is lighting and photography. So your photography and your video assets are critical if you want to approach these display or video ad campaigns. That can be where the cost comes in, is getting those assets really strong, hiring the talent you might need to be in the ads and things of that nature, which is where it can become both time consuming and tedious to get done. So down to the last two sections. Got about 20 minutes left on the webinar, so I'm going to keep it moving. The next section is on PR. So what are the goals? What are the outcomes? What outlets and publications are we targeting? What is the track record of your PR team with these publications? Do they have contacts? These are all really important questions with PR. So with PR, here are some goals that you might want to make sure are in your strategy, or when you ask, they should be part of the strategy. So PR efforts can be hard to track. Outreach takes a ton of effort and can often come up completely empty. And so having goals can keep your team on track. So here's some goals. The total number of pitches and total number of outlets contacted. These are easy to set and help people stay on track and on target. The total number of visits from journalists. You can track the number of stays you have, comped visits, or do a kind of a meetup or gathering of journalists. This is also really effective for online journalists, like bloggers or influencers, getting them together for an event, showing them a VIP experience, and setting a goal for how many people would show up for that would be one really great goal. And then, of course, the obvious one is the total number of stories written. You should set a goal, and you should, allow your PR team, your PR vendor, or your team member to set a goal they feel comfortable with, and then that should be the goal. And if they, if they're coming up well short of that multiple years in a row, that's probably an issue to look at. In my opinion, research is really critical for PR. So, it's normal for a PR contract to have a few months of planning and research time. Don't expect the outreach and pitches to start happening immediately. That's just unrealistic, in my opinion. So just an interlude here, not really tourism related, but one of our biggest clients has been featured in all these publications. And so obviously, great success is possible if you have the right strategy and the right approach, and you have something really interesting for people to cover. So next PR question, who are we targeting? So your PR team or vendor should be willing to provide a list of who they're trying to target before the outreach begins. I believe that the list should include a mix of achievable outlets and aspirational. So this should be people that are really obviously likely to cover you, and then some that might be a stretch and might take several years of effort to get a coverage in. So next question, do your PR team have existing relationships with the target publications? So PR is obviously all about the relationship, and I believe that an experienced PR team should have relationships with as many as 50% of all the publications you're trying to reach. And if they have like very few relationships, like you have hired a new person right out of college, or someone who hasn't been doing it very long, they're not going to have as much success because they have to build those relationships before they can even really start getting coverage. So one thing to note is a PR team with strong connections in one part of the country may not have any in your area. And if some of your coverage goals are local or regional, you should probably hire someone who's local and regional. And you may actually have to have two different PR teams if you want to reach different outlets that you can't find someone who has relationships with both. That's not uncommon to have kind of a local PR specialist and maybe an industry-related PR specialist involved in a project. And so I think it's also really wise that your strategy include going out to events. So a lot of times you'll see travel budgets in PR strategies to go to certain conferences, to go maybe to other important media markets in your region and meet people in first person, hopefully at a conference or an event where they're already going to be and kind of a captive audience, but maybe even more of an exploratory visit as well, just to have some lunch meetings or host a little event in another city to bring the media together. So last section, I'm going to try to get through this relatively quickly so we have a little time for Q&A, but the last section is about email marketing. So first question in email, what is the overall strategy? So in my opinion, my experience, most organizations focus on 1 to 2 email campaigns per month. Having a lot more or a lot less than that, especially in tourism, is probably a red flag. And in my opinion, the strategy should include distributing website content and events that were originally published on the website, so that the visitors who interact with the emails end up back on your website where you can track their interactions, you can check those goals I was talking about earlier, and you can they can have the full experience of the content as it was designed with the supporting links and navigation and maybe email, other signups and the conversions you want to get people to do. So it's an issue, in my opinion, if much of your resources are going to creating content that's purely for a newsletter. If that's happening, that content development is going to have a shelf life of a couple of hours or a couple of days after the email goes out, where I think you should have that content living on your website for months or years. So you should build a blog post, you should build landing pages, and then copy and paste a small amount of the content from those into the email campaign. Use the same graphics, use the same elements, drive people back to the website so they can have the full experience. Email doesn't provide a full interactive experience, but it's a great way to get people to come back to your website. So again, not a tourism example. This is the same client that I used as the PR example, but this is an email newsletter that we produce 2 to 3 times a month most of the year, and then this is for an annual conference, so we actually increased the volume quite a bit in the last few months, which is actually coming up this fall. But here we have multiple promotions. There's a ticket sale promotion in the second slot. There's a campaign kind of piece of content in the first slot. And in the third position, there's a promotion for a scholarship. So there's a little bit of text that we wrote for the campaigns on the email, but it's not very much, like a paragraph or two for each of the images. The images are being used on social media as well, so they're being repurposed. Some of them also are based on the images on the website, so there's consistency of effort and look. And then there's big links to the website where the actual action happens, where the people fill out the application for the scholarship, people learn about submitting a proposal, people buy a ticket, all the things we want people to do on the website. So the next question is, what is the goal open rate? So your email provider or team should be tracking the open rate and have be able to provide an update really quickly if you ask for it. Some things you can do to increase your open rate. You can test different subject lines and see which ones perform better. This is called A/B testing and can really help you get a better open rate. You can also segment your inactive users so that you're only sending to people who are engaged. This will increase your open rate significantly. It'll also limit the ability for someone to become re-engaged. So it's got to be something you have to take cautiously and try test as needed. So you can also optimize your emails with quick loading, not doing too many images, balancing the images and text, not using big background images, making the buttons and text read well on a mobile device, making it stack up well so it looks good on a phone, so that it'll have that functional use across all platforms, and then people get used to seeing a good quality email from you. They're more likely to open the next one. If they have a bad user experience one time, they may never open your email again. So here's some benchmarks. I think 20 to 30% is a good goal for smaller lists, under 5,000 members. 15 to 20 is a good goal for 5 to 10,000 names. 12.5% is your goal for your open rate for 10,000 to 50,000. And then 10% is a good open rate for larger lists. There's obviously outliers where people have better open rates than these. But this is just a good place to start. So if you have a small list, you better be over 20% or you probably have a problem. We have a client that has 20,000 emails, and they get 20% open rate sometimes, which is very good. And we've also seen the opposite where it's lower than average and we have to work on it and try to figure out what's going on. What is your click rate? This is the rate at which people click on the links inside the ads. So it can be challenging to benchmark click rate because different email formats and different industries have different click rates. Your email template and design play a huge role in your click rate. So emails with complex layouts or where the links are hard to find will have much lower rates. On the other hand, an email that's just like one promotion with one big button in it will have a much higher click rate and may skew your average toward the higher end. Because it's so specific to each campaign, I didn't put benchmark numbers in the presentation, but I linked an article, and the article has a table in it like this. This is a screenshot, and at the bottom, travel and tourism has these columns. The second one is a click rate. So 2% is the normal click rate, 20% is the normal open rate. This is average of all lists, so it includes very small and very large lists. So obviously you have to take your own list into consideration here, set your own goals, usually based on past results, and try to improve these numbers over time. What you want is them to gradually improve rather than to decrease over time. So next question, how are you growing your email list? So in my opinion, growing your email list requires coordination. So your email team needs to be coordinating with social media and website and other things to make sure the list is growing. So this could include a really strong call to action, maybe even a non-intrusive pop-up on the website, offering people special promotions or special campaigns if they sign up for your list, or some sort of one-time offer if they sign up. I love contests personally that require email. So we do a lot of tourism-based vacation contests that usually do extremely well. Obviously, they're often usually run through Facebook ads as a primary strategy, but they can get really good cost per email acquisition. You also may be to create a visitor's guide or other type of guide content on your website and require an email address in order to capture that content. So if your email strategy doesn't incorporate content, website optimization, website design, it's really not going to have the growth results you want. So here's an example. This is not necessarily a destination, but it's a conference that's sort of a vacation. And we run this annual conference promotion through a giveaway. And this is extremely effective. Last year we got 22,000 email addresses for only about $3,000 or $4,000 in total advertising, which was a big part of their ad budget actually. But the 22,000 email addresses that they got it added 22,000 to what was originally 33,000. Those 33 had come from 2 years in a row of doing this kind of contest. So we went from having only 10,000 email addresses after 10 years up to now having 53,000 after 15 years because of adding this contest a few years ago. So I think that's my last slide. I have about 10 minutes for questions. I got through the presentation in good time, I think. I know I went really fast, covered a whole lot of ground. This presentation will go out to everybody in email, and you'll be able to click the links in it. And I'm here for 10 minutes now. I can go a little longer than 10 minutes if necessary to answer questions. But before that, I wanted to just share a couple things. We'll be sending out emails about tourism-specific webinars for the next few months. We'll have another one in about a month or so. It'll be kind of an overview of best practices based on the ebook that we wrote. And then we'll have another one about the 5 biggest changes in tourism marketing for 2018 probably in about 6 to 8 weeks. And all this is leading up to our DIY tourism marketing workshop, which is a 2-day conference in Asheville, which is on sale now. It's almost half sold out. We're expecting about 80 people from small destinations from all over the Southeast, from as far north as Kentucky, Ohio, and Maryland, and as far south as Alabama and Florida. Last year we had about 45 people, and we've already sold about 35 tickets this year. So we're close to halfway sold out for that. We hope to have some of y'all join us for that this year. Happy to answer any questions about that. And this link will be in the presentation to how to get to the website for it. We're also going to be launching a 3-month online class for tourism marketing in a few weeks, which also we'll share more information about. And then we have, in addition to our tourism webinars, which we promote independently, we have a free webinar every single month as part of our larger training program. And those are free. They're usually the first Wednesday of the month. This month it happens to be the second Wednesday, so we actually have another free webinar next week. Next week's webinar is about email marketing and the new GDPR regulations that are how they're affecting marketing, and then the new changes to Facebook from the recent scandals and how that's affecting marketing in Facebook. So that's the webinar next week, and then the one in September is covering Facebook influencer marketing and Instagram, which I think are really relevant for tourism. So sign up for any of those. Jenna just put the link in the presentation chat. So you're welcome to. Those are free. We'll be doing this every month for the foreseeable future. And we always have a different topic and different speakers every month. So those are fun and to check out if you want to just keep the free training going, and then keep an eye out for future free webinars like this one, which are based on just tourism best practices, which is something we're really focusing on this year. But that's it for me. You can email me directly if you have questions, and I'll be on the call here for about 10 more minutes. So please feel free just to chat in any questions you have related to what I covered today or other things that you might want to ask me about right now. I'm here for a few more minutes, at least 10 minutes. If you want to ask questions, please go ahead. Also happy to hear any feedback from people about how this webinar was. I know it was a lot of material, a lot of text, but I didn't even cover all the questions that I wrote about in my ebook. So I just wanted to put it out there that I'd love to hear anyone's feedback if you want to chat that in as well. And also wanted to note that, please don't be scared to ask questions that you might think aren't the best. No question is a bad question. I love answering questions. I love the live portion of our webinars where people can ask what's on their mind. It can be anything you're working on, anything to do with digital marketing or online advertising. I have a lot of experience, and I really genuinely enjoy sharing it with people. So hopefully, if you have any questions, you feel comfortable sharing those today. I'm also happy to answer questions about the workshop we're doing in November or the new course that we're launching later this month or early next month as well. If you have questions about that, happy to answer those as well. Kelly, yes, we'll be emailing the slides in a PDF format, which will have no animation, but active hot links for all the links that are in the presentation. And yeah, so you'll be getting that in the next couple of hours, I believe, or by tomorrow at the latest. And just Jenna said in the comments, there's also a video recording of the call, so you can reference the audio as well. Does anyone like to share something they're working on? A campaign, a strategy, a tactic. One of my favorite parts of our workshop is we have an interactive session where people can live brainstorm what they're working on, come up with a campaign idea, share it with the group, and then get ideas for how to make it better, which is, I think I call that masterminding, or like working as a group to come up with the best ideas and strategies. And I find that with non-competitive environments, some of the best ideas will come from someone else just coming off the top of their head. Well, not seeing any questions, I'm going to go ahead and shut down the webinar, but we'll be in touch soon with information about the next one, which will be probably in 3 or 4 weeks, as well as the recordings, the slides. Those will come first, and the other webinar information will come later. And if you have any questions about anything we're working on or you're working on, just let us know. Email me directly if you'd like. I'm happy to answer questions over email as well. Hope you all have a wonderful day. I hope you found this webinar informative and helpful. That's our goal with these webinars, so we'd love your feedback if you think it could be better. Thank you all for your time, and hope to see you again on the next one. Thank you.